The story of U-570 stands out as one of the most peculiar naval incidents of World War II. It remains the only German U-boat ever captured by an aircraft, an embarrassing moment for the Kriegsmarine. U-boats were among the most feared weapons in the German arsenal during the World Wars. Operating silently beneath the waves, they struck without warning, often revealing their presence only after launching devastating torpedo attacks. Yet, despite their fearsome reputation, these war machines were far from perfect. Never more so than in the curious case of U-570. While submarines had been used in warfare prior to the U-boat, it was the Germans who turned them into a terror of the seas. The term U-boat comes from the German Unterseeboot, meaning undersea boat. The first U-boat was launched in 1906, but contrary to popular belief, Germany was one of the last major naval powers to adopt submarines. In fact, submarine experiments date back as far as the 1500s, and even German engineers were tinkering with underwater vessels by the mid-19th century. Still, it wasn't until the development of diesel engines and electric batteries that practical and effective submarines became a reality. By 1915, U-boats had made their mark in history by sinking the RMS Lusitania, a pivotal moment that helped draw the United States into World War I. At the time, Germany had just 20 U-boats, but their impact was undeniable. During both World Wars, U-boats were instrumental in naval warfare, sinking Allied merchant ships faster than they could be replaced. Winston Churchill even admitted they were the only threat during the war that truly frightened him. Yet, serving aboard a U-boat was no glamorous assignment. Life was cramped, smelly, and perilous, with over half of all U-boats lost during the wars. For the crew of U-570, this danger became all too real on their very first mission. U-570 was commanded by Hans Joachim Ramlow, who, although a seasoned naval officer, had no prior submarine experience. In fact, his entire crew was composed mostly of inexperienced recruits. Trouble began immediately. During a training exercise, a nearby Norwegian vessel was bombed by a British aircraft. Though the crew assumed the bomber would be too busy to spot them, the sub was ordered to dive for safety. Unfortunately, they struck a reef when touching bottom, damaging the bow, a torpedo tube cap, and their detector gear. While the bow was repaired, the detector gear couldn't be fixed due to a shortage of qualified technicians. This was an issue that was stemming from the rapid expansion of Germany's U-boat fleet. The U-570 departed on its first mission on August 24, 1941, tasked with attacking ships south of Iceland before then returning to the French coast. Almost immediately, they ran into engine trouble. A valve of a diesel engine was not properly secured, causing the cooling system to fail and the engine to overheat. They were forced to continue on one engine. Meanwhile, water was seeping in, likely from a leaky exhaust pipe from one of the torpedo tubes. Despite these setbacks, they reached the area south of Iceland where they were expected to engage a convoy on August 28th. But a day before the attack, more misfortune struck. Rough seas left many crew members seasick, and the captain decided to submerge for relief. After 2 hours at a depth of 90 feet, they resurfaced without checking for enemy aircraft, which was standard procedure and could only be explained by a sheer lack of training of the captain. Unbeknownst to them, a Lockheed Hudson light bomber piloted by James Thompson of the Royal Air Force was directly overhead. Hearing the aircraft engines, Ramlow attempted a crash dive, but it was too late. Thompson dropped a stick of 4 250-pound depth charges. The closest one detonated just 10 yards away from the sub. Inside, chaos erupted. Gauges shattered, water began to flood in, and a strange gas, believed by the crew to be chlorine, filled the air. Believing the vessel to be doomed, Romlo ordered the sub to surface. High seas made it impossible to man the deck gun, and soon they were fired upon by enemy aircrafts. In desperation, the crew waved a white flag from the conning tower. While waiting for capture, the crew tried to destroy as much sensitive equipment as they could, including smashing their cipher machine and throwing it overboard. The next day, British ships arrived and towed U-570 back for examination. While there was some damage, it was largely superficial: broken gauges, light fixtures, and sabotage by the crew. There were only minor leaks other than a hold ballast tank. British engineers concluded that any moderately trained crew could have kept the sub operational. No trace of chlorine gas was found, and key systems such as the batteries, engines, and pumps were intact. For Germany, it was a humiliating loss. The Allies not only gained valuable intelligence, but also repaired and recommissioned U-570 under the Royal Navy, renaming it HMS Graf. It became the only U-boat to serve both sides during the war, completing 3 combat patrols before being decommissioned in 1944. Well, that's the strange but true tale of U-570. If you enjoyed this story, or you have any suggestions for future content, drop a comment below. I'm Frank Ciopatini with Servetti Software, and I'll see you in the next one.